A statistical fact known by the gaming industry insiders and commented on by people in the American and European gaming markets is the particular yet absolute fact. Microsoft consoles sell poorly in Japan, and games relating to it have a negative reputation within the country as well. The reasons date back to when the first Xbox console was released in 2002 within Japan. From the moment the console was first put onto the market, sales were low. The first Xbox was discontinued in 2006 within Japan, just 5 years after the release when compared to the Xbox being released in 2001 in America and the console being discontinued in 2009, almost 10 years later. Data released from the era of the Xbox 360 shows that the original sold poorly in Japan, selling just 2 million units while on the market in the country from the years 2002 through 2005. What's interesting is that the 360 sold even more poorly than the first system, only selling barely 1.5 million consoles from 2005 through 2011. Edge, a British gaming magazine, reported that in August of 2011, the initial lack of anticipation of the console or of Microsoft in general were contributing factors with steady and constant declining sales in Japan, where Microsoft has been unable to make ground against its competitors of Sony and Nintendo within the country. This lack of interest among the Japanese general gaming community led retailers to scale down the supply of the 360 consoles, and some locations even stopped selling Microsoft merchandise completely. The Xbox One sold poorly in Japan as well, continuing the trend of Microsoft consoles not selling well in general within the Japanese nation. The first 3 Microsoft consoles had lukewarm reception in Japan and even downright hostility in some situations. This would reinforce the national bias that the Japanese have towards the Microsoft consoles, or even Microsoft in general. Some gaming analysts have theorized that Microsoft will always sell poorly in Japan. Consoles will sell in the country, but the amount of consoles sold and the amount of revenue earned will be nothing when compared to the American or even European markets. But why? What is the reason for the Japanese being so resistant to the Xbox consoles made in the USA? Before the original Xbox was released in Japan, when news claims of an American console would be brought to Japan, there were very clear and present fears of it. Something new, foreign, and American would disrupt the status quo in the gaming industry. Ever since Sega and the unfortunate early demise of the Dreamcast, this led to a gap forming in the market for a console and developer, and Microsoft were very eager to attempt to fill the gap. But the Japanese were not about to have any of it. Some of the American complaints about the Xbox seeped into the Japanese market, and they were able to relate to it as well, such as Microsoft seeking to fill a void left by a beloved manufacturer and developer, and anger towards Bill Gates for using money to try and bring in a console to bring in sales as well as funds only had limited uses and effect. The Xbox consoles were also very bluntly American. The shape, appearance, and feel, including the dimensions of the console, were very much made and giving the impression to everyone made in the USA. And the Japanese did not and do not like this. The design. The original console was also heavily developed for the American gaming market. It's something that has sort of remained throughout the development of the consoles, and it has alienated the Japanese gaming market because of 3 reasons. It's big, bulky, and black. Claims were that smaller hands had a harder time gripping onto the controller, pressing buttons, or using it, and the Anglo-American bias for the English language were present with the X on the console itself. Though most of the future consoles kept the black color, some say as an attempt to imitate Sony consoles. There were claims that were later proven to be true with the redesigned Xbox 360 with a white appearance and slightly smaller controller design were made in part to try and appease and appeal to the Japanese gaming market and the Japanese gamers. But even these redesigns by Microsoft did not help the 360 to be sold in Japan. Xbox Connect. During the lifespan of the 360, Microsoft noticed Nintendo's Wii console and the remote for motion sensor gaming. Deciding to try and combat Nintendo in Japan with their own version of the gaming concept, Microsoft did not expect how much of a backlash would occur as a result of this. Selling for the Xbox 360 and Xbox One, the approach internationally were mixed for the Kinect, but the biggest negativity were the sales and reception from the Japanese market. Firstly, motion sensor gaming isn't for everyone. Even Nintendo had problems with it. But due to Japan being the Nintendo fortress, the Wii were able to ride out the complaints and problems relating to motion sensor gaming that those years had. Secondly, once again, Microsoft suffered decent financial losses from the lack of interest in Japan, and the Kinect impacted Microsoft even more negatively. Halo. In America, Halo is a widely successful and critically acclaimed game, but in Japan, reception to it has been average. There's not necessarily a lot of anticipation, respect, or people playing the game in the country. Those who don't necessarily support the Xbox consoles often complain that the lack of a real gaming library for the Xbox has led Microsoft to build the consoles around the game franchise, and the Japanese have apparently noticed this as well. This is why when Halo games are released, the anticipation in Japan can be often less than that when compared to other countries. With all of the reasons now known for why Microsoft does not necessarily sell its consoles or games adequately in Japan, this does not mean that the leadership will abandon sales in the Japanese market entirely. They do make money there, even when it's nothing when compared to what they make in the American and to a lesser extent the European gaming markets. Analysts believe that Microsoft will never really gain a presence in the Japanese gaming market, and all they can do is try to salvage sales whenever or wherever they can within the country.